Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com and Weiss Advice here on YouTube. Special shout out to Produce Like a Pro for letting me use their studio to film this video. If you're not already subscribed to Produce Like a Pro, what are you doing? You should be. Okay, so if you've seen my prior videos on MixWave, you know it's no surprise that I am a huge fan of everything that they're doing. I did a video on their CA70S, which is an incredible plugin for making things thicker, warmer, less harsh, and I also did a couple of videos on their Hazelrigg VLC. I'm doing another video on the VLC because I have a really cool opportunity here. I don't usually do videos like this, but I have the actual hardware unit that they modeled in order to make the plugin, so I thought it would be really fun to do a comparison between the software and the actual physical hardware that they modeled. They claim to use some kind of algorithmic component modeling that is new and different and special, so we're actually going to be able to put that to the test. So let's see here. I'm going to jump on in and I'm going to play this vocal. It's a raw vocal, and I'm going to discuss why I would be even using this plugin to begin with.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose.
So it's a good sounding vocal, but it feels a little bit, maybe a little bit not so interesting yet.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers.
So a little bit of saturation and a little bit of air might be really fun to add to this. It's already a fairly bright vocal, but I'm thinking going a little over the top with it and making it like especially breathy and airy might be cool. So I'm going to push the gain up here in line mode to get a subtle but still distinct saturation, and then also use this bit of high boost right here. And we end up with this.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers. Been missing you lately.
And in context, it sounds like this.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers. Been missing you lately.
So it's a very stretched sound, but I think it works really well for this very EDM-inspired track. So basic gist of it. Now, on the hardware, I'm doing something very, very similar, but not identical. So one of the things that makes hardware shootouts a little bit tricky is that every single piece of hardware is going to be different, even if it's the same make model, because component tolerances are not fixed. It's very, very common, even in very well-regulated analog componentry, to have tolerances that sway between 10 and 15%, depending on the build, and that would be considered pretty tight tolerances. So two units are not necessarily going to sound the same. In order to get this as accurate as possible, I had to check using a null test, meaning flipping the phase on one version of the print, the hardware versus the software, getting them as close to matched as possible, and then fine-tuning it all by ear, going back and forth as much as possible to see if I could get them as close as they could be. So if we take a look at our settings here on the hardware, we're going to see that the gain is a little bit lower. I'm coming out a little bit hotter from the actual output of the interface, and then coming in here, we've got the same settings, and the high boost is almost in the exact same position, but I want to point out it's not exactly identical. If we compare that, we can see that in the plugin, to get it to sound the same, I found that I had to be ever so slightly lower, and I'm talking about just a tick. Now, of course, this is the version that was actually modeled, so any different version of this could be significantly different, but what matters is, can I get them to perform to the same quality? So now with these set, let's compare them in real time in solo here, and I'm going to start with the plugin, and I'm going to switch interchangeably between the two. And mind you, this is in solo, so any differences are going to stand out in theory.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose. We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose.
And if you think that that went by too quick or that you couldn't catch it, me too. It's pretty hard to pick out discernible differences. I'm going to let one full loop of it run from the plugin and then one full loop of it run from the hardware, and then we'll listen in the context of the record, but these are pretty darn close.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose. We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose.
That's pretty darn close. If I were to qualify the differences, I would say there's like a slight bit of roundness in the mid-range in the hardware version, and there's a little bit more extension to the top in the plug-in version, but I'm going to pull it into the actual record and play it back, and I suspect we're not going to be able to hear those differences at all.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose. We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose.
I think I would struggle to pick those out in a blind test. I think maybe I could get it, but I don't think that I would feel very confident. And on top of that, more importantly, because I think this is more important as to whether or not the hardware and the software is accurate to each other, I don't necessarily believe that one is particularly better than the other. So I think the MixWave guys did a pretty darn good job. There are utility differences between the hardware and the software that I think are also worth mentioning. The hardware is a microphone pre. Since the plugin is software, it inherently cannot be a pre. Pre means before line level. The whole point of a mic pre is to get mic level up to line level. If you're in the box already, you've already gotten to line level. So it cannot be a pre. I would say this would be kind of something more like, say, the UAD unison thing, where it could be used to create the character of a pre. So if you went through like a very clean, sterile preamp and then wanted to apply the character of the VLC, you could use it in that context. But the context that I usually use it for is more as like a coloring tool, something that kind of gives the imprint that you would get if you were, say, bussing out to a console. You can do it subtly in that way using the line input, which is frequently how I do it. I also use it for the top end EQ and the bottom end EQ because just the EQ curves sound fantastic. Now, at this point, we're going to deviate a little bit because I'm going to start messing around with stuff, and there isn't going to be an exact way to set things up so that they match so closely. But I think it's going to be worth doing anyway, just for fun, where we can experiment with some of the bands and see what we get out of this. So if I pop back on over to the hardware, for example, let's pump up the low end a little bit. Let's also be able to hear what we're doing.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose. We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose. We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose. We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds. Been missing you lately.
Yeah, I like it very airy. I don't necessarily want to give it more body, but I think if I was going to give it more body and we were going to go for that sound, I'd say probably around here is pretty nice.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds.
Kind of like a romantic low end sort of sound. That's nice. Let's see if we can replicate that on the plugin.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose. We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds. We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into love.
Kind of looks like we ended up in pretty similar places. The hardware is giving me a slightly tighter sound in terms of amplitude.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into love.
Whereas I feel like the plugin's actually giving me a slightly smoother sound overall.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids.
I think maybe just backing this off a hair might be good.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovebirds. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose.
Yeah, Yeah, I feel like I need to just adjust the level matching ever so slightly and turn the hardware up a hair.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose.
There's maybe one more hair here if I wanted to try and match them. Not that the goal should really be doing this, but hey, why not? We're here.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose.
Yeah, okay, so let's run it one more time and then wrap this video up here. So this is our plugin one time through.
We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose. We would get lost inside each other. We were just kids turned into lovers. Been missing you lately. Give me something more to lose.
And again, pretty darn close. Now, I don't know where we ended up. Let's take a look at the plugin versus the hardware. I mean, those are almost spot on exactly. So, I mean, we're looking at the one that was modeled for the plugin, so it makes sense that we're ending up in extremely similar places. And by the way, the reason I was adjusting the low boost and the low cut at the same time was kind of to see if that Pultec-y thing would work, where the curves are slightly different, if I could get some different stuff out of it, just for fun, just trying it out. But yeah, so to conclude this video here, I would say, if we're comparing the actual model that was modeled for this, I would say their algorithmic component modeling, whatever that means, is actually doing its job. That is pretty darn spot on stuff right there. And that's, I think, part of the reason why I love this plugin so much. So if you dig this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, hit subscribe with the bell notification so you get notified. And lastly, you know what we say here at Weiss Advice. We are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.